Hello guys, this is Logan, and welcome back to another Skyblock episode. This is episode 50, and we are back. This is going to be the special world tour of my over 8-month Skyblock world. So yeah, let's get into it. So the way I'm going to be doing this tour is that I am going to be showing the stuff in the order that we built it. So for instance, if I built something in episode 1, it'll go before something that was built in episode 4. And we're just going to go in order of that, just to, show our Skyblock progression. But yes, so the first thing that we did in episode 1 is that we built a tree farm. The tree farm is right here, and originally it only had 9 dirt to grow trees, but then we increased it dramatically to 18 spots to grow trees, and it's still like that to this day. We expanded it on episode 4, and it has served us well ever since. The next thing that we built was on episode 3, where we came over here and we built a chest storage room and a smelting area. Of course, it has changed a lot since, but I'm putting some screenshots just to show how it looked. Over here, we had some chests, and then over here we had some furnaces. And this served us very well until we built our castle, which I'm going to go over later. So yeah, this base was pretty much our little base of operations in the early days of our Skyblock world. The next thing that we built was a cobblestone generator over here. Of course, it's not still here because that was a long time ago and I've removed it and built a better one since. But we used to have a big boxy cobblestone generator over here, and to be honest, it wasn't all that good. We would lose about a third of our cobblestone to a half of our cobblestone, and it was super big, boxy, and ugly, and I just didn't like it. So what I did was that I came over here and that I built a better cobblestone generator in episode 9. This served us a really long amount of time and ended up being our big major source of cobblestone for the majority of this series so far. Then, in episode 6, we bridged out to the Flower Island in episode 5, and then in episode 6, I decided that I wanted to do something with that. So I proceeded to build this flower farm. This flower farm is our source of dyes. So we have the blue flower for the blue dye, the lily of the valley there for, I think, white dye, the oxeye daisy for, I honestly can't remember what dye it gives us, but you get the point. All of these flowers gave us dyes, and still do give us dyes to this day. So yeah, and of course, for dyes, we can make colored concrete, and just other things like colored terracotta, and just pretty much everything you can do with dyes. Then, in episode 8, I built this infinite water source. Before episode 8, I did not have an infinite source of water, so this was a very big step in Skyblock progression. But then, once I had an infinite water source, I decided that I needed to get a head start on growing sugarcane. Sugarcane was going to get us plenty of paper so we could make rockets in the late game and mid game, and it was also going to get us our first enchanting setup. This was my main source of sugarcane until episode 47, where I built a whole building just dedicated to sugarcane, so I have plenty of sugarcane. Then, after that, I built a very big farm. That is a major part of my skyline here on my world. This was a mob farm, and is my main source of mob drops. You just come down here, kill all the mobs that spawn up in there, and then the mobs, when they spawn up there, they get funneled down into this tunnel, where they fall, and then I can punch them and get a bunch of mob loot. Then I just come over here and put all this mob loot in the chest. This mob farm is really great because it gives us some really useful drops like gunpowder to make rockets, arrows to shoot with our bow, bones to make bone meal, and yeah, just some very useful items that we will use for the rest of this series. Then episode 10 came. Episode 10 was my first big milestone in terms of episodes, so I decided to do something big. I built 2 crop farms on either side for symmetry because there were some gaps in here. because the gaps were there, because I decided that I was going to build this big fountain. Of course, at the time, there wasn't this big castle here, so it was just this little fountain, and I knew at this point that I was going to make a castle, so I was preparing for my first big project. Then the day finally came. On episode 12 to 15, I started work on my castle. On episode 12, I mostly just did the floor, and it was just a brief layout on how big my castle was going to be. Then on episode 13, I did some major work on the walls. Then in episode 15, I finished the roof, and I also started some work on the castle's interior. So on episode 15, I built this storage room, which is filled up to the brim in all the chests with our stuff. This is still currently our storage system, and because of all the stuff we have, it is kind of overflowing, and stuff is kind of getting unsorted. Like, there is some ender pearls and sandstone. I mean, that's a sandstone. There's cobblestone and stone in the sandstone bin and things. But yeah, so then in episode 15, I also built the dog room. This is where we have our dogs, and it's just this nice little area. Also, in episode 15, I built this cactus farm. The water's being annoying, so I don't think I'm gonna have to show you. Oh, wait, there we go. Those are the cactus, in this cactus farm. We built this on episode 15, and this has been our source of cactus. At this point, I just really wanted to automate everything, and also I was trying to find a way that I was going to fit this room, and this room just screamed cactus farm to me, so I just built one. I added the water later, so that wasn't added in episode 15, but what I did do before the water, I would just run around and collect the cactus and put it into this chest. Right now I have 2 stacks and 32 cactus, so I'd call this cactus farm a win. Then in episode 16, I made this nether portal. The nether gave me access to a bunch of new resources, so this was a really important part in terms of our Skyblock progression. Then, in episode 18, I did another very big thing in terms of our Skyblock progression. I made this area in here where I had a bunch of villagers. I still have some villagers to this day in here trading with me, but a lot of them have moved out to another place that I will show later. But this was a big, important part of our progression, because this allowed us to get certain tools like diamonds, and just a bunch of other things so much easier, like cookies, apples, bread, food, cakes, a bunch of other things. That this was just so important, and this is still very relevant to this day. Villagers were this villager area was probably the most important thing that I've ever done in this world so far. Then, in episode 19, I leaned a little bit towards the decorative side, and I built this fish tank. Originally, there were a bunch of fish and lively swimming in here, but the thing is that there was this bug back in 1.18 where some entities would randomly despawn. So, yeah, that happened, and there's no fish in here anymore. But it honestly still looks very nice, and I'm glad it's a part of my castle. Then episode 22 came, and I made this enchanting setup. This was how I enchanted my stuff, and still is how I enchant my stuff. So if I ever need to enchant anything, this is where I go. It's a full 15 bookshelf area, and I have an anvil, a barrel to store all of my enchanted stuff, including my enchanted books, and I have a grindstone, so if I get a bad enchant, I can just disenchant it, and voila. Also, in episode 22, I made this cake room. The idea of this cake room was that whenever something special happened, like, for instance, episode 50, I would eat a slice of the cake and put a sign up here on why I ate the cake and when I ate the cake. So as you can see here, I ate some cakes back in late 2021. It is now April 21, so I guess it's kind of cool to see old things. Then, in episode 23, I built this bedroom. This is starting to get cluttered with overflow for my storage room. But yeah, this is my bedroom where I sleep, and I also have a loom here where I can make flags or whatever, including my Skytopian flag, which I will get to later. But yeah, right now this is sort of just a messy overflow room where I can store a bunch of my armor, tools, and everything that I've got from raiding in cities. Also, of course, I can sleep here, so that is very nice. Then I built the final room in my castle. This was my chicken farm and is my way of getting food. So I killed the chickens because I don't need it anymore. But I used to have chickens there, and then when the chickens would lay the eggs, the hopper would pick it up and then funnel it into a dispenser where the eggs would be fired, making baby chickens, and then when those chickens grow up, I just press this button and lava gets dispensed, killing the chickens so I can get a bunch of chicken and feathers. Now that we are done with the castle, it is time to backtrack back to episode 14. Episode 14 is when we built this kelp farm. The purpose of this kelp farm, of course, was to get a bunch of kelp, but kelp was a very, very useful item. Kelp could be used as food and can also be crafted into a dried kelp block that smelts 12 items. Dried kelp is a very, very, very good fuel source, so that is what encouraged me to build this farm. How the farm works is that you can just walk up, you can just mine the kelp there, it all shoots up and out this top area here, which is really, really satisfying, and I really, really love harvesting this farm. But yeah, then you can just replant it, and boom, 36 kelp. Of course, it's not that amount every single time, but it gives roughly the same amount. Then, in episode 17, I built this huge, big beast of a farm. This is my gold farm, and how it works is that some zombie piglins spawn on those spawners up there that the map gave you. Let me come over here to demonstrate. But yeah, those spawners spawn zombified piglins, as you see there, and then they go into a water stream, and then get pushed into this little block, where a wither rose kills them, and I can get a bunch of rotten flesh and golden nuggets. So this is really, really useful, because I had a cleric that traded me 3 gold for an emerald. Also, half the stack of rotten flesh for an emerald. This was the way I got emeralds early game, and still is a big portion on all the emeralds I make. This was also the first episode that I started talking, so yeah, this was sort of a big milestone in terms of making my episodes just slightly better. Then, in episode 24, I decided to make a flag for a future city that I was going to make. The city would be called Skytopia, and this was the flag I decided on. As you can see here, it is very, very bright blue towards the top, which is meant to be the sky, and then it gets darker and darker as it goes deeper into the void. And then in the middle, as you can see, there is a little green dot, and that dot represents our island, right in between the sky and the void. That just symbolizes how dangerous this game mode really is, and what we've made out of our very, very, very harsh circumstances. Also, in episode 24, around here I made this big platform, and it was a cobblestone generator that used pistons and a redstone clock to push cobblestone out, and I would just mine the cobblestone. Of course, this was probably the least efficient cobblestone generator I had ever made, so I promptly, about 2 or 3 episodes later, tore the thing down, including the platform. Unfortunately, I do not have a screenshot of this, so you are going to have to look back on the old YouTube video to see the cobblestone generator. But yeah. Then, in episode 25, I built this melon and pumpkin farm. The point of this farm was to get a lot of melons and pumpkins, because at this point in the series, I was trying to make a farm of literally almost every single resource we had with us. So yeah, I still use this to this day, and I have a bunch of melons and a bunch of pumpkins that I still haven't found a use for yet, but I'm sure I will find one in the future. Then, in episode 27, I decided to build a cocoa bean and bamboo farm. I was still running along the gist of making farms for everything that I had, or near everything. So yeah, cocoa beans and bamboo was the next thing I had in mind. Cocoa beans were used for cookies, and the bamboo I still haven't found a use for yet, but of course, we have a bunch of it now, which is all that matters. Then, in episode 28, in preparation for the dragon that I was about to defeat on episode 30, I decided that I was going to make a potion farm. Of course, the potions farms were patched in 1.18, and so I never ended up working, but I ended up replacing this with a lava farm a little later. This, of course, is my infinite source of lava. So now if I ever want to build something in the nether with lava or anything, I know the place to go. And here I just have some building resources. But yeah, this was the last thing that I did with the castle. And with that done, the castle was done, so I decided that I was going to start my next big project. And that big project was a sprawling town named Skytopia. So this is my town that is a work in progress, and of course this is Skytopia. So earlier in episode 33 or 32, I forgot which one it was, I finished this huge grass platform. This took me hours and was a pain, but I eventually got it done. So after I got this platform done, I started working on the buildings. So in episode 34, I built this cobblestone farm, and is my cobblestone farm tutorial. So this is the cobblestone farm that I use to get my cobblestone. You break the cobblestone, and the hoppers pick up the cobblestone, and then all the cobblestone goes into this chest. Of course, I've emptied it out because I have a use for the cobblestone. But yeah, so that is the cobblestone farm. Then following that, in episode 35, I built this XP farm. How this XP farm worked was that there was a bug in earlier versions of 1.18 and before, where you could sort of use the furnace as an XP bank, and you could take the items out, and it would give you way more experience than it was supposed to. So yeah, this is what I used as an XP farm source. But yeah, the roof isn't really completed, and it doesn't really look all that nice from the interior, but from the exterior, this is a nice little jewel. Then, in episode 36, it was nearing Christmas time, so I decided that I was going to make an area called Snowland. So the Snowland was pretty much another part of my Skytopia, but it's in a snow biome, so of course I thought I was going to use that, and I made Snowland. I made it separated by this big wall here, and when you walk in, there are a bunch of paths that I completed in episode 36. So yeah, I just built the wall, and I made this big area of paths. Then, in episode 38, I made this snow globe. This is very ugly. I did not really know what I was doing when I started building this. I was just doing it in the moment, and I really at the time couldn't do any better than this. Of course, now I think I could do better, but it was cool at the time. So yeah, as you can see in there are little houses, I guess. And yeah, that's the snow globe. Then, following in episode 39, I made this huge building, and this building was a snow farm. So you walk in here, and there are 4 snow golems that you can mine snow at. So you can just take your shovel and then hold down left click, and you will mine all the snow. Snow was useful at the time for building, and is still useful, but I just haven't used it since. Then you come up here, and there's this little attic area that I was going to use for storage, but I just haven't gotten to that yet. Then, in episode 41, I made this ice castle where I gather ice. This is probably one of my worst builds. It's really bad, just to be honest. But it's function that matters here. This is my ice farm, so I can gather a bunch of ice here, and I can use it for things like item transportation systems, which I haven't got to yet because I'm not that late game. I'm planning on doing that sort of stuff soon, but not right now. Then, in episode 45, I built this villager trading hall. That is my current area to trade with my villagers. Of course, you can see in here, I have a mending villager. That's flame. Mending villager. So I can trade 1 emerald and a book for a mending book. So literally everything is just 1 emerald, and of course I have my Fletcher here, where it's like 1 stick to an emerald, 1 flint for an emerald. Everything is cheap, so I can easily get a bunch of emeralds and spin them here. This was in episode 45, but it wasn't completed building-wise until episode 48, where I made it look how it does today. Then, following in episode 46, I made this sugarcane farm. This area is my current place where I can mine sugarcane, and you can get a lot, like, really, really fast here. Of course, I'm mining it in creative mode, so it doesn't drop it. But, yeah, I can get a bunch of sugarcane really, really fast in here, and this will probably be my source of sugarcane until a lot later in the game. Then, coming to the end here, this is my most recent build I have in this world so far, but in episode 49, I built this Enderman farm, and this is currently the best way I can get Ender Pearls in this game. So how it works is that the Endermen get attracted by the Endermite, and then don't realize that this is a hole here, then they fall down into the hole, and they teleport out sometimes, but they eventually fall down. Then you can just come down here, and you can just slap these Endermen down here until they die and drop their Ender Pearls. I'm going to go get my sword just to speed this up. But as you can see here, it's a really, really great way to get XP. And you get a bunch of Ender Pearls. Like, just look at this. So yeah, that will be the end of this world tour. But before we go, I just want to say that the world tour that was earlier was filmed in a creative test world, or a copy of my world. So as you can see there, I was flying. So yeah, that was just a creative copy. But yeah, so this is episode 50, which is an important date. So I went to eat a slice of the cake in here. Ooh, okay. Time to eat a slice of the cake. I haven't done this. And here, let me see. The last time I did this was in November, which means I haven't done this in 5 months, which is almost half a year. So I'm just going to do it. And my hunger bar is full. That's really anticlimactic. Okay, my hunger bar is finally down. Time to eat a slice of this cake for the first time in 5 months. Oh, man, that cake was really, really good. Oh, man, okay. So that's cool. Now let's fill out this little sign here. So, this is the 3rd slice. This current date that I'm recording this is April 9th. Okay, sorry guys. When I pressed 9, my video cut off, because 9 is my hotkey to turn off the recording. But yeah, so I made that sign. But before we go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, yes, you, the viewer, for watching this video. I would have not been able to do this over the past 8 months without you. Yes, you, watching my video. But yeah, so I just want to say really, really big thanks to you guys. Because, of course, I wouldn't be able to do that without you. So yeah, this has been Logan. Thanks for watching.